Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. 5 hours of content a month for $5. Again, I'm going to have this show free from Tuesday to Saturday. Saturday's always going to be a light news day. And when I come back on Tuesdays, it'll most likely be a summation of everything I missed on the off days. I mean, I plan on not having any off days. I plan on having more guests and co-hosts on the weekends. I was trying to get in touch with my man. I was trying to coordinate with my man that's in Thailand right now. It's where we can maybe do a regular show on Sundays or Mondays. And I might do one with my brother tomorrow as well. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to just go through some basic news from today and then get more into this AI bubble, because I feel like it's always nice to expand on that. I would have started the show earlier, man, but I'd be real with you, man. I was watching this Mind Unveiled, right? This video about Nashville Unveiled. And Mind Unveiled, he be making some long-ass videos, bro. This shit is like 4 hours and 46 minutes and 26 seconds, bro. And I'm at 4 hours and 9 minutes, and I had to stop it. But, like, every time I was about to stop it, I was like, damn, he's saying some shit. Let me just let him sizzle a little bit, you know what I mean? But I feel like Mind Unveiled, for communicating to normies and not being abrasive, I think it's like, he got a nice package, you know what I mean? They got a pause, triple pause. But not like Mind Unveiled really does have a good system, as far as his formula and putting the visual prompts with what he's saying and everything. I think it's some good work. So I mean, for the most part, some of the stuff I'll be like, I think it's just the timing of it. Maybe if he revisits some of the topics later with some better AI imagery, when the AI gets even more creepy, then maybe that, those topics will, have, he can give them more justice as far as the images that go along with those topics. But I was watching this shit about Nashville. I mean, the typical rhetoric when it comes to the Tartaria thing and the World's Fairs and everything. And I feel like I got the gist of it, like more than the gist of it. I feel like I'm aware of what's going on more than most people in the actual history of stuff. But then he be spending the time going through, with a fine-tooth comb, going through all the the World's Fairs and the details on the cities and the underground tunnels of the cities and the fake pictures in the Library of Congress. Is so many edited photos in the Library of Congress. I mean, the history is so fake, and I appreciate Mind Unveiled for taking the time out of his day or whatever. I don't know what he be doing he be having like 12-hour videos sometimes. You gotta eat them joints in chunks, but I mean, for the most part, it's worth it. 95% of his content, I feel like, is worth it. And it's just good visuals that you can show other people and be like, look, because I feel like a lot of us, we understand what's going on. We can grasp meltology. We can grasp the idea of a free energy, advanced civilization in the not so distant past, having been established and headquartered in America, but reaching throughout the world. I think a lot of people can come to that place, but sometimes people need them visuals and they need it to be worded a certain way, and then the tone, like just his tone of voice is not going to be off-putting to people. For me, I could fall asleep maybe watching it, but some people that are just really, their nervous system, they sensitive and they heavily indoctrinated, I think Mind Unveiled could be a nice antidote for them, because maybe I'm just too abrasive, I'm like a scouring pad, whereas he's just like a little gentle little brush for you. I mean, he don't never go as far as I'd like him to go, but again, I think it's always nice to have people with different approaches ultimately bringing people to a place where they can maybe ask some questions that make reality obvious for themselves. I mean, And before I guess I get into the news, I might as well get into this real quick. I just don't. I really don't like the fact that in 2020 I was speaking to Alex Jones, and he invited me to come on his show to host the last hour, and then he backed out. The thing is like, I know once they agreed to it, they like scoured my channel, you know. And I remember like getting a comment on an old video, and the only thing I said, I was like, it was years ago, because I've been on this shit for a long time, but like, I maybe didn't communicate. I was more abrasive, you know. I had no elegance in what I was saying, but you know, elegant words aren't true, you know what I mean? True words aren't elegant. And I just feel like I was really blunt, you know, and unpolished. And you know, that's what politics, the root word of politics really is, being polished, you know, and kind of worn down in a sense, being smoothed out by the environment really. But I was just not polished in my approach to things years ago. And if you go into my YouTube, you know, maybe 10 years ago, I was still saying the same things, but I might have been saying them way more aggressively. And all I was saying was like, I don't believe a bunch of old white dudes in suits run the world. And that's all I said, you know. And I remember, I think like it was one of Alex Jones' producers commented or said something like, I don't know, said something. They didn't say that, they didn't announce themselves as Alex's producer, but I had talked to the producers before, and I feel like that's the only person it could have been, you know, because people ain't really surfing through my old shit. Like, you have to really be actively in the videos, and then you probably have to search my name alongside Alex Jones, and I don't think a lot of people are even in a place where they would do that. So it all coincided though. It was like, he was like, yeah, come on the show, I invite you on, boom, we'll coordinate. I talked to the producer. I talked to several producers. You know what I mean? They used to text me. Rob Dew used to text me. Or I'd text them, you know what I mean? And I'll be like, what's up, man? I'm trying to do this. And he'd be like, yeah, he's busy. You know, we'll get you in. And then the shit just, after that happened, after they went into scour my content, they was like, we're not letting you on the show, I guess. I just never, there was no contact after that. And then I got deleted, you know, off Instagram. All in the same, like, 10-day period, you know. And I'm not saying it's his fault that I got deleted. I mean, maybe he has something to do with it, but I don't think so. I'm just saying that they really scared and really sensitive. You know, like, you gotta really be on board more than like even a super majority. It can't even be like, yo, I agree with you 60-40 or 70-30, but I got my own views about these things. They need you on board like 95%, and then we can have disagreements on like miniature things. And I think that foundational things in the outlook of objective reality, you know, our experience of it is different. So they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it, you know what I mean? And then they try to lump you. He treat people the same way, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people probably treated him. And they be like, oh, it's Alex Jones' conspiracy theory. We just hand wave it away and put that in a certain category. And that's how I feel like maybe he has learned behavior and he treated people like that. I don't know. But ultimately it's fear. Whether people was afraid of him at some point when he used to say real things, and then whether he's, you know, trained to be that way with others. But so that shit was whack, right? That was like 2020, late 2020. Like early November 2020. And then I don't know when this shit happened. I really don't know when the day was when Nick Fuentes blocked me. You know what I mean? Because I get his notifications, or I was getting them before I got blocked, you know what I mean? And I was, you know, I would comment here and there. I went back to check on it because somebody was like, what'd you comment? What'd you say? And I was like, man, what did I say? Did I get reckless? Did I really maybe respond on some knee-jerk shit? Because sometimes they be so ignorant and arrogant at the same time, the pale supremacists, that I be like, I can't bite my tongue. I gotta say something. Even if only 100 people see this shit, I'm gonna say this shit. But I never said nothing crazy, man. I really never said nothing too crazy. The craziest shit I said was for them in their community. I was like, black Americans are the real Israelites and America is the real Israel. You know what I'm saying? But that's not even the most recent thing I had said. The most recent thing I had said, like the last two things, because Nick was like saying some shit like, just talking about how, like, I guess how he's been, like, I guess a figurehead for being awake or whatever. And I was just like, man, yo, I know, he said for being truthful. I was like, yo, basically, you truth light, bro. You're truth light. And then somebody commented and was like, who's bigger than him being more honest than him? Or who's more influential in being more honest than him? And I was like, UBTV on YouTube. And that's the last thing I commented before I got deleted. And that's not even crazy. Why would you even delete that? And, you know, like I said last night, he said in his last interview with Tucker, he was like, my best friend is Jewish, you know what I mean? On that shit. So I don't know if that's who's moderating his shit or if he himself actually did that. But either way, I wouldn't surround myself with somebody that's that fucking soft as sugar like that. You know what I mean? It's not even soft. It's just that they're very hardened. You know what I mean? It's not even softness. Softness would be like suppleness and flexibility. These motherfuckers is stiff and hardened and have no flexibility, very little range, and, you know, no mojo, man, really. To be totally real with you, there's no real substance there. It's a lot of conditioned behavior, a lot of conditioned rhetoric. People have polished themselves in a way that they know will be received by certain audiences, and then they bend on certain things, you know, like I seen Nick was like, man, we condemn people dressing up like Nazis on Halloween. But I'm like, bro, you hanging out with Ye, he got the fucking swastika chain. But so it's cool when you can suck his dick, but it's not cool, you know, some other way when you want to be politically correct and like appease a moderate base of people to where you can kind of break through into the mainstream. I'm just like, man, this is what happens with everything. Anybody, it's like the Hollywood divorce, man. And that's where, if you're really loyal to the reality, to yourself, the reality within you too, it's like the Hollywood divorce is never going to be possible. So then you can't really reach a state of exaltation or separation from reality. You know what I mean? And I think like anybody like that's buying into like the moon landing. I mean, Kim Kardashian don't even buy it. Off top, Kim Kardashian is keeping it more real than Nick Fuentes. Just off the cuff, she's keeping it more real. As much as he's saying mad shit about Jews, and she's not, that is like the bedrock of the situation we in, of the propaganda, is you knock away the fake space shit, space travel, NASA, and nukes. You know, then you know what I mean, you really, the whole conversation and playing field changes at that point. So I feel like it just, you know, it's not a shame. It's like I knew he was never on the same side. I never looked at it like we're on the same team. It's just funny, man. It's just funny how people be like, yo, man, pro free speech or whatever and all that shit. I was being very, very moderate. I wasn't even commenting like that much for it to get there to where you block me. And I'm just like, damn. The one time I remember I commented early. I got the notification and I commented like boom. Soon as he posted something, I commented. And a lot of people saw that. And of course I got all the gripper trolls trying to come at me. Cause I mean that was the time when I was saying like, yo, I said some shit like, you know, the same thing, like American blacks are the original Israelites, and dominants are the producers of the recessives. The recessive cannot produce dominance. A recessive child cannot or a recessive person cannot produce a dominant child. They can't. It's just not. A dominant person or couple can produce any shade or anything, dominant or recessive person. So, that's all I said. It's not like I'm saying like, yo, like crazy people be talking reckless, but to him especially. But it's like, if their platforms, like the dude Brandon Tatum, he's a fucking clown, but his platform, he got like 1 million followers, so he's allowed to talk shit and say shit to him, and because he knows that's just gonna get more following. If it's a motherfucker being real and they don't have a lot of a follow, they definitely want to suppress that. Somebody coming from a different angle than they can really pivot from, because they used to certain arguments. You know what I mean? Like when people come to me with like certain arguments about whether it be natural birth or abortion or breatharianism or veganism, it's like white belt shit. You know what I mean? It's not like we in a black belt conversation. I'm not dealing with other black belts. Typically, I'm getting the same questions and we're going to the same place, and they tried to roundhouse me and I flipped them or whatever. That already happened. So like, when somebody comes with some black belt shit in an arena, and like they got a fighting style that you've never mastered, then you have to really come at things differently. You have to really humble yourself and go back to the drawing board and work with this person. You know what I mean? Like Tupac always was quoting the 5 deadly venoms. The dude made the 5 deadly venoms. He mastered all of them, and then he trained 5 dudes, and they mastered each one individually. But as good as they got, they could never beat him because he knew all 5. And so if there was somebody that had a 6 deadly venom, he would have to work like, all right, I don't want to become obsolete. We need to work together, and I'll teach you what I know, or I want to learn from you. I don't want to be destroyed. And that's so many people, they too rigid to do that. You know what I mean? People are not supple enough to adjust and roll with that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if it's the white is right mentality that anybody can fall into, whether they be dark skin or pale skin. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't like it. It ain't no point in getting too personal. Again, I wanted to keep this about the news, but I guess I wanted to start with that to get warmed up. It's just crazy where it's at, man. I never thought that I might have commented like 7 times or something like that, and I got blocked. Which makes me wonder, like, how many people does he block? Or is it just anybody keeping it real and not that many people is keeping it real? You know what I mean? Because typically you're either going to get those easy arguments coming from typically the more left of him. The thing is, I feel like I'm probably even more right in the sense that of conservatism, like actual real conservatism in the essence of like conserving reality. So I'm more to the right than most people in that sense. If you're calling me a conservative, I'm actually a conservative. People is like conditionally conservatives. You know what I mean? In my circumstance, I'm really a conservative at my own peril, because I'm not saying shit that people like me want to hear. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying a bunch of shit that people like me do not want to hear and will immediately turn off. Whereas a lot of them play to their base and play to their face. They play to people that look like them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't give a fuck if everybody that look like me don't like me. It don't really matter to me. As long as I can live being myself and die or pass on in that state as well. That's really kind of all that matters. You know what I mean? It's not like I need to hold punches because motherfuckers that look like me won't like it. You know what I mean? Ultimately, if you like a faith-based person, you should walk by sight, you should walk by faith, not by sight, and you should be not concerned with the flesh, right? But that's how you know if they scared. And it makes me like, I think the thing, most of the time when people get scared around me, I get angry because I know what it's like to be scared, and things have happened to me when I was being afraid and not facing reality. And I resent it, and it makes me so mad, like that I let certain things happen to me out of fear. So when other people get afraid, it makes me like, my natural inclination is to go into anger, and I gotta control that. But I just feel like that's that's what it is. I'm like, damn, you're really scared, and it's like a disappointment. Generally speaking, like when a person is afraid of something that I really don't find frightening, or even remotely frightening. I mean, I can sometimes identify with a person like, okay, I see why you would want to not drift in this direction or that direction based on your predisposition. I get it. It might not affect me in that way, but I understand. In a lot of these respects, I really can't understand. Like, what? Are you afraid? Are you afraid of losing popularity? Are you afraid of God, like you say? You know what I mean? Afraid of losing that touch and that reality. So I think it's not many people out there that's really like that. Like, there's people I feel like there's honest people that are insulated. People around them are kind of buffering them and trying to keep them from becoming even more honest. Because some people will get exposed to shit and then adjust to life accordingly. Whereas like some people, it don't matter. They'll never adjust no matter what. So, what I mean? I think that there are some people out there that you could call real or realer, but it's not many people that adjust accordingly and on time. A lot of people are going to go through a lot of pain ignoring stuff and then eventually adjust, and then by that time they might be tired and not in the same position that they were in. Like, there's a bunch of pro athletes that I know or that follow me, and they just gonna go through a lot of pain, or they already have, because they just not ever gonna take the initiative to really realize their will and the nature of reality. So anything representing that, they resist. But a lot of times, again, like I said, people will watch me because they want to hope that I pray on my downfall, because they feel like if he's losing, then what he's saying is losing or something. And it's like, nah, bro, like reality, if I'm being real, then for one, I can't lose. And for two, like, like, even if from your perspective, I'm going through something, it doesn't validate your ignorance. Like that's where I think people are. They be like, the same way you validate your fucking parking, they validate the ignorance. They watch me just because they be like, look, he going through some, he going through shit, and it's public now. He going through it publicly too. On top of that, it's like, bro, I mean, I'm in a public setting because I'm okay with going through this shit alone and with others witnessing it. And we all just got to work on being more honest. And it's just, this is the fear that keeps it from happening. You know what I mean? I deal with it in my own ways, like trying to spare people, but ultimately just trying to spare myself, because, people, like I was talking to this one shorty about it. One time we were talking about, if we would be together and everything. And she was like, would you be with me if you had money? And I was like, man, if I had money like that right now at this point, I mean, it's all hypothetical. Like, I can't answer that. Who knows? Once you get that potential, who knows how that would go? Like, you couldn't, like a lot of people say, like Benny the Butcher said, like, money don't make you solid. It just makes you 10 times the person you was before you got it. And I think that's true. But at the same time, the money can animate you, and a lot of people don't have that fuel or that animation, and they don't have that self-respect without it. And once they get it, then it animates them, and they could get caught up in the anima, and then vanity and pride or whatever that takes over, and a person does things that they normally wouldn't do if they was true to themselves. You know what I mean? The money can just amplify that ignorance or the darkness, the anima inside of a person. So, but I think at this point, like I was saying, I was having a conversation with the chick, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe if I had money, I might have a lot of people just because I had a power to do it. Like I can afford it. It's just like a person that might have multiple vehicles. They might be thinking about having a Lamborghini, but they can't have a Lamborghini. It's not the question. You might want to drive one, but it could be out. You don't have the access, so you don't think about it. But then once you get the access, then it becomes a thought. And so I was just like, I don't know, man. To be totally real with you, I can't speak on some hypothetical shit, and I don't want to. And plus, I don't like speaking on hypothetical shit just because it's taking us away from right now. And I remember, like, she responded, like, emotionally. And I was like, yo, you know what I mean? You won't never let me be honest. And she was like, and you want me to lie about how I feel about your honesty. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I be trying to spare myself at the same time. Like, cause I don't want to make somebody, it's not that I'm making them be emotional. It's just that I don't want to face the reality of their emotions. You know what I mean? Of the situation. And so it's like one thing to be real, say some shit that's honest or whatever, but then you have to be honest with their response, how that makes you feel and think. And so a lot of times I feel like, I definitely that's where I be struggling with being more honest, when I could just really just check someone right then or say something really honest and do it early. But I'll be like, damn, then I'm going to have to face their response to this. And, it's not even about their response. It's about how I feel about their response and what I'm going to go through on that end of it. And so I'll be like trying to spare myself. I don't really give a fuck about the response. It's selfish. But, yeah, so I don't know. I think I'm just saying that just to say, like, a lot of people that I feel like get money or get recognition, maybe they never had recognition, or they never lost shit and got shit back and whatever. Maybe, you never know how much they might be clutching to something, and they're trying to spare themselves of going through the stuff. But I think it's good exercise, and it's good metaphysical exercise. But enough of that, man. I guess enough of the personal stuff. I'll save that for like another time when I'm getting on some philosophical, psychological shit. I really wanted to talk about the AI bubble and the new Palantir developments, but the major U.S. news stories today: Hurricane Melissa aftermath, 50 people died. I don't know. I mean, it's gonna happen, bro. Really, isn't hurricane season from like May to Thanksgiving? Isn't it just part of it? You know what I mean? Just like you get a fire season out here, it happens. Pretty much the same season. U.S.-China trade escalation. China has expanded export restrictions on rare earth minerals, requiring foreign companies to seek approval before exporting products containing Chinese origin components. This move mirrors U.S. tactics and intensifies the ongoing trade war. I don't know if that's just to squeeze the consumer or what, Every time I look at anything with China, I be like, they was propped up. They was completely created. Mao Zedong and the whole CCP shit from 1949 on. I mean, even before then, there was meddling with the French connection and everything from the West and China through the heroin trade, the China wars and everything. They're pretty much a manufactured entity as well. So I don't know. I never really know. It's almost like the Russia thing too, where it's like y'all both benefit off of acting like enemies and then having proxy wars. Everybody benefits off of it. So technology prosperity deals with Japan and Korea. The U.S. signed bilateral agreements to deepen science and tech collaboration with Japan and Korea, aiming to align standards and accelerate innovation. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is military. Obviously, there is a military partnership with South Korea and in Japan, and Korea makes like a bunch of the androids, right? I think, right, that Samsung is Korea and stuff. And between Taiwan making the chips, Japan holding the most U.S. debt, even more than China, and in America having huge base in Korea because of basically a proxy war with China in the 50s. It all kind of seems like just, more of a military industrial complex mixed with big tech move. It doesn't really, they kind of, at the top, again, it's a small circle at the top. They're moving closely, so. And again, like, a lot of that shit is family. Motherfuckers is Canaanites, whether they be Korean, whether they be from fucking Italy, whether they be from, you know what I mean? It's a lot of different types of Canaanites. And I was talking to my man Oliver, he got here yesterday. He said, because I got the map of the all the bloodlines biblically on my wall. It's a map. I had ordered it, and he was like, "Yeah, this is crazy. You can see everybody from Adam to Jesus or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool and everything, but it's more so Shemite focused, and I think that's cool and it's important. But we need to know, for identification sake, we need to get more information on the Gentiles, the Japhethites and the Hamites, because then you would know who's who more. I think it's cool to be like, all right, these is the Shemites, or the original bloodline, or the special people, whatever, people with special leadership status. That's cool. We follow that line or whatever, and we want to know who that is. But we also need to know who the Hamites and Shemites. We need to know who the Hamites and Japhethites are, so we can identify who's who and who's and what they're not. Because people get lost in the sauce of it. They look at it like, this is a Chinese, or this is a Korean, this is a Japanese dude. But no, these people are all Hamites. You know what I mean? Like, a lot. When you could be talking about 6-7 different looking faces of people, and they might be doing deals or working together, or have different shades of skin, and they be all Hamites. And people be like, this is a crazy coalition of countries or whatever. These people came together. They be like, yeah, they cousins, bro. It's not, whether they know it or not. You know what I mean? Somebody knows it. But, yeah, so whenever I see anything with Korea or Japan, I see it like that more so. Again, that's like kind of the whole thing, is like we're agreeing to cover up the history of like the original black Japanese. There's Japanese people with afros not long ago. You know what I mean? They just been whitewashed out through conquest, lost wars, and then also with the pen. People can just classify people as this and classify people as that, and then that could change their whole mind and their outlook and their trajectory and who they breed with. Going from autochthonous, original, to a Native American, to black, to Negro, to African American. That whole shit could change your whole identification of who you let in your body or whose body you enter. Just because they say to you, you're this, that's what you are. Now you just fucking everybody that they lump into that term, and they're not really the same as you. But the SNAP benefits ran out today, obviously, right? November 1st. Like I said, the judges, they tried to order the shit, to force them to use the emergency funds, but this political football, Trump had to be like, they asked Trump, like, or they told Trump, like, you forced to do this shit. And he was like, well, how? This guy asked how. And, I just ultimately think this shit is just political football. Everybody knows what's going on. Nobody's really willing to move because it don't really change nothing. It don't change their bottom line. Most of the people in their inner cities on food stamps, they was never going to vote for right wingers anyway, like I said. So they don't really care if they go, they suffer from the situation. So nobody's really moved. And the left likes it because they can use it as like political ammo. That's what you see, like, with a lot of politics. When people are out of power, when they don't have a majority, they like that position as well because that gives them a position where they can blame. And then when they're in that position, it's easier to run for office because you can say it's their fault, vote for me, it's their fault. When you're in power and people be like holding you accountable and there's nobody to blame, and when you try to run for re-election, it's not a good look. So They like being powerless as much as they can, you know. Okay, Ohio cities rise in national rankings. Why is this in the top news? A new report ranks 6 Ohio cities among the top 100 in the U.S. for quality of life. Yeah, that is until that motherfucking late October roll around. I'm not living in nowhere near them Great Lakes. Cold ass motherfucking area. Nah. I think Ohio probably got. I would have fucked with Eastern Ohio before the East Palestine train derailment. When all the chemicals went and spilled everywhere, I wouldn't have no problems with Eastern Ohio at that point, but now I can't do it. I don't know the rivers or nothing like that, how the shit's flowing or the wind, and I don't feel like doing that much research, honestly, into a place, because I was thinking about it, getting some land in Eastern Ohio, because it's only like 7 hours from my mom's house. It's not a bad drive once you've been living in California this long. Major international news stories. Israel rejects Turkish troops in Gaza peace force. Israel's top diplomat announced that Turkish forces will not be part of a proposed international stabilization force in Gaza despite U.S. efforts to broker a ceasefire agreement. Basically, the ceasefire is off, buddy. Basically, if you thought that was going down, that was off, buddy. Because that was the peace agreement, right? They were going to have like a unified force of the region. You'd have some Egyptians, some Jordanians, some Turkish police in Gaza. So it would be like a coalition of countries or different types of people. So they couldn't just run roughshod over the Palestinians, and it would become more of a international zone. Gaza would be, and obviously they just rejected that. They agreed to it, and then what do you know? Some tiny hats reneged on the deal. What do you know? They pulled the tiny hat from up off of, you know what I mean, from under you. You know, circle rugs are just tiny hats for your floor, and they pulled them bitches from up under you. But yeah, that's what that means. That's all that signal is too, that they're gonna go back into Gaza, but right now they just gearing up probably to bomb the shit out of Lebanon some more and Iran probably. Russia launches long-range strikes in Ukraine. Ukraine has been hit by deadly missile attacks, prompting President Zelensky to demand stronger international responses. These strikes follow recent deep Ukrainian incursions into Russian territory. It's so much propaganda that it's hard to comment on. I seen this shit that Putin had like 10,000 Ukrainians encircled, and he was like, look, we're not going to kill them. We just want the media to come in here so y'all can see how we be having motherfuckers at our mercy, and we be just not murking them. And if they do anything, we want the media to come in and see it before they start trying to get these motherfuckers murked. And yeah, so I don't know. Again, it's a proxy war, and Slavs been slobbing for a long time. It's like a piggy bank of for like humans, where people can be just used as pawns to be destroyed, and whether it be surrogate farming, sperm donor farming, because Ukraine's the biggest sperm donor. It's the capital of sperm donation, and the capital of surrogates. Whether it's war, because that was one of the front lines in World War II. Germany went in. That's why you had a lot of Nazis go into Ukraine after World War II ended, because they knew they couldn't go back to Germany. So, you had a lot of that. That was the front line. You know what I mean? And it's in Poland, too. Poland, again, was part of Germany. It was Prussia. Northern Poland is Prussia, which was part of Germany. That was the whole beginning of the conflict. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that they used all these Slavs for one reason or another. World War I started because a Slav shot some dude. So they've been using Slavs as pawn pieces for a long time, and by Slavs I mean slaves, and by slaves I mean the original slaves. I mean the genetically created to be slaves. The Zelensky, the motherfucking Netanyahu is a Slav. They all Slavs, bro. They are slaves, and they've been good dogs for a long time, and People been using them. And so you got Slavs all have penetrated all over the world. You know what I mean? The Slavic influence has penetrated the earth. Because you think about it, like, wherever you see the cryptos, that's really you seeing Slavs. You know? The Slavs that penetrated South Africa, that penetrated Brazil, all of Latin America, and paled everything out. That's just Slavs, or crypto Slavs. So they on both sides of it, man. You look at the Russian connection. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they could say the shit that Trump was a Russian asset because of the connection. Because Trump's son-in-law is Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner's pops is a real estate magnate, just like Trump's daddy put him on. Jared Kushner's pops put him on. They both work in New York real estate. The Kushners is Jews. They work with the Chabad Lubavitchers, which is like a Russian Jewish organization, and they just tight with them. That's where the connection is there. Again, the Slavs come from that area. Ukraine is Russia. You know what I mean? All that shit is. It's not really the real Russia, but that land, that area, that Western Asia area, that part of the world, that's where the Slavs were set off the pasture and they built up their numbers. Like if Slavs were working all their life and they bonded out and they like, all right, I'm done being a slave. I've been a slave for 25, 30 years. I'm only going to live 50 years. I'm supposed to be here long. I was a slave, born a slave, and I worked till I was 25 or 30. And I bonded out. Now I can start my life, live off the rest of my 20, 25 years of life. The area that they were doing that was Ukraine and the surrounding regions of, where the Slavs are still heavy today. Because, when Rome is Edom, you know what I mean? And when Rome was having their slaves and all the caliphates had their slaves, it was Slavs. It was, like if you look at the Turkish or so-called Ottomans, which became Turkey, their slaves, Turks are Mamluks. The modern day Turk is a Mamluk or Mamluk, and they are so-called Caucasian. Circassian, I think, is the type of people, but that's, I might be butchering the pronunciation, but those are the stock for Slavs. And so they were West Asians, they're Caucasians or whatever. They're not the original Caucasian, they're not the original dwellers of the land, they're not the first people to be there or to establish culture or infrastructure in the area, but that's where they were spawned from. And so whether you're a caliphate, like the Ottoman Empire, with the Ottoman Empire came from a caliphate, they had an abundance of Slavs, the Mamluks, and then they took over the area because they got their numbers up. And the same thing happened with Edom, which was Rome, which was the Byzantine Empire and Western Rome. So like they had their own, Edom or Rome had their Slavs, and when they were done, when they were decommissioned, they were put off the pasture in Ukraine and that surrounding area. It's a rugged area, but that's where they were put off the pasture. And I guess it kind of makes sense for like a pale person, you know what I mean? Like they really wouldn't do well in the heart of the Roman Empire. They wouldn't do well in modern day Croatia, the Italian peninsula, Greece, or nothing like that. The heat of those places at different times of the year probably would be bothersome. It would probably be better for them to spend greater amounts of time in West Asia, to have some more sanity. And so that was like a reserved place for Slavs. And then it kind of just became a piggy bank for wars and, slavery. It was always kind of, again, the stock was a piggy bank for wars and slavery. If you look into the Barbary slave trade, these slaves are typically pale people. That's what a slave or a Slav is. Everything else is anybody that's dark that is enslaved is just a prisoner of war. They're not a slave. They weren't born a slave. And it's a difference between being a genetic slave or Slav. Like somebody would say, I'm Slavic, I'm a Slav, I'm Serbian, I'm Croatian, I'm etc. etc. That's their genetics. That's who they are genetically. Whereas somebody that might have been had their family killed, they got displaced, and then they got put in forced labor, that's a prisoner of war. That's not a slave. And that's a distinct difference. And so that's why, again, if we can come to terms with that, I think it'll be a lot more reality being experienced on Earth, because somebody fucked up by making slaves. Honestly, they was fucking up. People was doing that, fucking up. I do think the quality of life for slaves initially was not bad. If the world's in complete harmony and you're a slave in a situation like that, and you can bond out and you're not a slave for life, it's probably better than the way it is now. Now slaves run the world and everyone's in a slave state of mind and everyone's suffering. Whereas like if the world was in harmony and the leaders were leading and you were a slave in a lower end of society and that, you're still having a better quality of life than now. So I think people will have to come to terms with the fact that their ancestors fucked up by banging slaves, making slaves, abusing slaves, and then the offspring of those slaves, some of them lashed out, started wars, deceived people, took over, enslaved other people, because they got the formula. They know how to enslave and they know how to inflict pain. They learn that, they learn, and then they took it to another level. They took it to a more detached, more rogue level than anybody with a soul ever could have done. And so people got to take responsibility at some level. I know like everybody wants to be like, white people did everything. And then people look today like, look, black people commit all the crime. And it's like, look, y'all both need to understand where you both fucked up and your ancestors fucked up and how you fucking up right now. With your mindset and your trajectory. So, it's not like, again, that's why I feel like I don't have a big following and I won't ever, because I'm not letting nobody off the hook in that respect. As much as I know like who the originals are and the potential of the world, if they're the leaders, I also know like they're not immune to pride and vanity and jealousy and, a wrath. And that's what got us in the situation. Nobody's immune to that shit, man. Some people have a greater tolerance and they can respond better when they're experiencing those things. But you're going to be challenged by those things in your lifetime. Nobody will ever live a life that's not a challenge. For some people, they easily pass the test, and it's not. It doesn't. They stay true to themselves more easily. But we're talking in a massive civilization that spans the world and that requires everyone to be in on the harmony. I mean, it don't take that many bad eggs. You're gonna get some. You're gonna get some spoiled people when everything is like that. And then people become decadent and they become jealous and then they start generating slaves and fucking their slaves and amassing numbers, using their slaves and their stocks as weapons, their slave stocks as weapons to take out their adversaries and then usurp different areas of the world, and then eventually the karma kicks back at some point probably where they get overthrown and then slaves take over and then they don't even know how to run the ship and now the ass is leading the head, so I think it's kind of where we at, man, where it's like the slaves have penetrated all levels across the world in all different languages in all different countries, and everybody's kind of dealing with that. And nobody wants to accept the reality of the situation, Everybody just thinks it's like clear, like just blame all white people for this or whatever. And it's like, look, I get it. I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but let's see how the fuck they even got here. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like coincidence, you know what I mean? It was somebody, playing with the genetics. And it's an issue. People dropped the ball. Somebody picked it up, and maybe they weren't supposed to have it, but somebody was inevitably going to pick up the ball and lead, even if they wasn't designed to. So I don't know if you can really be mad, because things got to move forward, even if it looks like it's moving backwards. So when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, it's so much propaganda. I don't know it. Other than that, that's all I can really say. I give you a long spiel like that. Like, they love the proxy war. If they didn't, they would have been stopped it. They love it. So Trump-Xi summit in Asia. President Trump met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea, resulting in agreements on trade and rare earths. Trump describes the meeting as amazing and hinted at tariff reduction. I talked about that yesterday. Sudan massacre and humanitarian crisis is ongoing. Brazil's deadliest police raid. That's crazy. 121 people died. The most lethal police action in Brazil's history. That's some City of God shit right there. It happened in Rio. Targeting a massive operation in Rio de Janeiro, targeting the Commando Vermelho, the Vermelho gang. That's crazy. Bom dia. Okay, today's biggest AI headlines include Amazon's massive layoffs linked to AI restructuring, China's push for global AI regulation, and NVIDIA's new US-made Blackwell chip hailed as the start of an AI industrial revolution. Yeah, Amazon cut 14,000 jobs, citing, I don't know if this is on top of the 30,000 that they said they were going to cut the other day. I don't know if this means 44,000 jobs or if this is the beginning of the 30,000 in cuts. Experts warn that AI may be used as a cover for broader cost-cutting measures. Yeah, there's going to be plenty of people just broke and be like, gotta let you go, man, AI. I'm like, what? You're not even using it. Yeah, but you just don't know. You're not smart enough to know yet, so we're letting you go. NVIDIA CEO declares start of AI-powered industrial revolution. Jensen Huang announced the first U.S.-made Blackwell AI chip wafer, praising Trump-era tariffs for boosting domestic chip production. NVIDIA is also expanding partnerships with Hyundai, Samsung, and SK. Yep. Like I said, man, it's the biggest company on earth. NVIDIA, the most wealthy company on earth. $5 trillion is crazy work. That's a fucking country. If you're a CEO of a company like that, you're a CEO of a country, basically. AI's climate toll. Data centers threaten emission goals. Surging demand for AI infrastructure is driving fossil fuel use in the U.S. power sector, jeopardizing climate targets. New reports highlight the environmental costs of powering massive data centers. Bruh, I've seen a bunch of shit on the server farms once they move in. To people, they moved into like rural areas. They made like warehouses with server farms in them, and people's health dramatically drops. People have all types of health issues and bone density issues from just being radiated that closely. So, it's toxic. You're powering the parasite. That's what a server farm or any power plants that's just solely dedicated for that type of shit, you know what I mean? For propping up the AI, that's just basically like a power plant for the parasite. AI psychosis and ChatGPT's mental health impact. OpenAI estimates over 1 million users weekly express suicidal thoughts while chatting with ChatGPT. The FTC is being urged to investigate AI's mental health risks. Bro, these people... What, they were thinking it, now they just typing it? What? If AI can convince you to murk yourself, it was already not going to take much anyway. You could have scrolled into the wrong thing, and it'd have been curtains for you that way. You see a bad bitch, and you're just like, I'll never have one like that. You don't necessarily need AI. AI in healthcare. Predicting breast cancer risk. Doctors are using FDA-authorized AI platforms to assess women's 5-year risk of developing breast cancer, marking a major step in predictive medicine. I don't know, bro, man. This is the thing. I did want to talk about this. I've been meaning to talk about this when it comes to cancer screening, especially mammograms. Mammograms cause cancer, bro. That is that but it's they want people to take the mammograms to test for breast cancer, but that's what causes the breast cancer. A great deal of it to radiate women in their breasts in that way, and it's not that it's necessarily just a mammogram, but they want people to do it. I think every year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I think they want, once you reach a certain age, they want women to check for mammograms, use mammograms to check for breast cancer every year. I think. That's a lot of radiation, on top of the radiation you're already being hit with, and the chemicals and the microplastics and who knows what else is in your environment. So, not only is the mammogram toxic and it leads to cancer, I think a lot of biopsies, when people, they say it's safe, right? They say, when you have some tissue, a cyst or a tumor that could potentially be cancerous, you can take a biopsy, right? They cut a piece of the tumor and then they check it for cancer, right? I feel like that's what causes a lot of the cancer to spread. That's what makes a lot of it spread. And they say that the numbers are fudged though, because they say like it's when you take a biopsy or whatever, that it's such a detail oriented process that it's like a very small amount of people that get the biopsies are their reason for it spreading is because the biopsy. But I think a lot of the times people get the biopsy, the shit spreads, and then they do use chemo or they cut everything out, and then things go into so-called remission, and it fudges the numbers because a lot of the people that get the biopsies are going to eventually get everything cut out anyway. It's not like a lot of people that get biopsies and then they say like, hey, you tested positive for cancer, and then they be like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna ride this out, treat it naturally. Most of the time they get the biopsy, somebody says like, you got cancer, they're like, all right, well, I'm gonna get this shit cut out or do chemo, and then you die from the chemo or comorbidities, you know what I mean, and or it spreads and they blame it on whatever other reason. They don't blame it on the biopsy itself. So I feel like a lot of cancer itself is spread through checking for cancer, because you've seen, I don't know if a lot of people might have seen these videos where they look at the tumors, especially like in intestinal cancer and stuff like that. They look at the tumors and you can see like when they zoom in on it that it's just worms in there. So you cut that bitch open, your body is like put them in jail, and then so you cut that bitch open for a biopsy, and then you just let them bitches out, and everything they were eating is contained in there as well. So you cut the shit open, and now it spreads to another level of tissue, and now it's in your bones and your blood, and you're done. Top AI news worldwide. China proposes global AI proposes global AI regulator at APEC summit. They call for a World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization. So what's that? WAICO, to govern AI development and international rules. This positions China as a counterweight to U.S. tech dominance. Is it a counterweight, or is it all the same homies? Having to act like shit is separate in the WWE of politics. AI assistants misreport news nearly half the time. I was talking about this the other day. A global study found that 45% of responses from major AI assistants, including ChatGPT and Copilot, contain significant issues in accuracy, sourcing, or context. I mean, you can ask the same question different ways at different times of the day and get different answers, bro. You know, it's almost like you gotta look at it like carpentry. Like you gotta measure twice and cut once. You can't. You gotta ask multiple chatbots, or ask the same question from both sides of the argument. Because it should be fucked up all the time. Palantir and Lumen signed $200 million AI deployment deal. The partnership aims to accelerate enterprise AI adoption by integrating Palantir's platform with Lumen's high-performance networking infrastructure. I'm going to get into this in more detail in a little bit, but yeah, if anybody knows anything about Palantir, that's basically the PayPal mafia mixed with In-Q-Tel and the CIA, and that's JD Vance is pretty much like their sock puppet. And you know, because Peter Thiel and Musk, that's the homies. You know what I mean? That's the PayPal mafia homies. AI-generated news content surges in U.S. papers. University of Maryland study found that nearly 10% of news articles in smaller U.S. papers contain AI-generated text, raising questions about transparency and editorial standards. This is basically saying that, like, just like kids are just using AI, and your doctors and shit is just using AI to pass everything, all the news is AI-generated. So, how much can you even trust it? We already have fucking artificially intelligent humans writing the news. Now you got those motherfuckers using artificial intelligence. That's obviously inaccurate 45% of the time. North Korean hackers use deepfake AI on Zoom. Hackers impersonated executives using AI-generated deepfakes to steal cryptocurrency during a Zoom call, highlighting growing cybersecurity threats. I think that if there's any money in, like, online work probably involving AI, it probably would be with cybersecurity. That's probably, I mean, it's just going to be more and more insecurity online, so. Alright, what I wanted to get to here with the AI bubble. Many experts believe there's an AI bubble because investment hype and company valuations are outpacing real-world profitability and sustainable innovation. The situation is drawing comparisons to past tech bubbles like the dot-com crash of the early 2000s. Why some say we're in an AI bubble. Skyrocketing valuations without profits. AI companies are being valued at billions despite many not yet turning a profit. This disconnect between valuation and earnings mirrors classic bubble behavior. Yes, it's a Ponzi scheme. Yes, motherfuckers are just grifting a bunch of money off the wave of AI, and all of this shit will be consolidated into a few companies in the near future, and then you'll have total vertical integration with AI. And investors are pouring money into AI startups and public companies based on future potential rather than current performance. And that's where you fuck up, bro, with everything. Where you be like, yo, I think I'm gonna do well. Like, nah, you need to be doing well, and then we can. Like, I had a coach one time tell me, like, he was like, you think that somebody gonna pay you and then you start working hard? You think you're gonna work harder once you get paid? It's like, no, you work smart or hard or correctly, and then you get your just due because you don't get anything more than what you gave. And then if you feel like that shit was worth it, that'll motivate you to continue to work. You know, whereas this shit is all speculative. It's not actual value. And that's why you have all these companies basically like, yeah, just invest. We're going to be on the cutting edge. And they're not turning a profit. But people are pouring their money into it. And the bottom's going to fall out, man. And they're going to be like, where'd my money go? And they're like, we took it and ran. We had the Ponzi scheme. We had to pay the new investors. We had to pay the old investors with the new investors' money. And continue to skim. Major players like NVIDIA, OpenAI, and AMD are investing in each other, creating a feedback loop that inflates perceived value. Critics argue this gives the illusion of a thriving ecosystem that may not be sustainable. It's the same thing with BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Citadel. They all buy shares in each other to keep each other propped up. Man, the economy is gutted. There's nothing there. Everything is completely speculative and fake. You know what I mean? It's all we're just dealing with the fact that people don't know how fake. They don't know the depths of how fake things are, and they don't know the origin of reality. So you could just keep this shit going, keep the carousel going as long as they want. Imagine if it's like you and 10 of your homies and y'all just keep investing in each other. You know, like you got chains, right? And then so you all give each other. Everybody gets a chance to wear all 10 chains at once. And so everybody take pictures of the guy when he's wearing all 10. And you think like, damn, he's doing it. This guy's got 10 gold chains. So many chains, I need another chest. You know what I mean? Like, you see him with his, you know what I mean, all his chains shining, and you're like, damn, he's fucking killing him right now. Damn, I can't beat him joining him. I might as well just invest. You know what I mean? Because he must be doing it. Meanwhile, he only got one chain or like some links in a chain. He don't even own his own chain. It's like, you know, and they all sharing chains, making it look like they doing it. And that's how everything is right now. Everything is so fake, bro. Because people don't know. They don't really, you know, they know the price of everything, the value of nothing. They don't really know the exchange rate on a metaphysical or a physical level, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just like having casual sex or something. You know, like you like, I get this euphoria, I get some confidence real quick, little boost, little fake confidence. And then you don't know that you pay for that energetically, like with a credit card like that you really should not be using. You know, you should be saving that for really special occasions. Like, that's not something that you can tap into like willy-nilly, bro. That's not like, you know, something frivolous, you know, that you can be frivolous with. And so that's pretty much the situation we're in, you know, with everything. Everybody, you know what I mean? All the podcasters doing the same shit. They all got each other on each other's shows. Everybody is in this circle jerk motion, and that's why it's all spiraling into oblivion. Because there's no it's not any real collaboration. It's not really actually working towards greater realization of the origin of reality. And then transmission of you know, expanding the transmission of reality once that's discovered. That's not what people are working towards. Everybody operating out of scarcity. Even people with a lot of money operating out of scarcity because they don't want to go back down to a certain level. It's like I was talking to this dude about the Masons. My man Oliver. I was talking, he was like, my grandfather was this level Mason. I was like, yo, them higher level Masons, you might be 30th level, but you only converse with people from your level down. You don't even know the next level. They compartmentalize you. So people, it's just like military people. They get security clearance, and they don't want to get it stripped away from them because they feel like, number one, they get insider trading. Number one, if they know the flows of the government, then they know that what's coming, and they can hedge their assets, and then have insider trading and come up financially, and, you know, support and secure their security with their family. So they get security clearance, you know what I mean, with that situation. Like, that's why, you know, people, like, you look at Pelosi's portfolio, like, she stay winning. Her and her husband continually winning. All their investments, always winning. Because they're part of the government. They know what strings to pull and how that's going to affect the private sector. And so they know how to invest. And they see, it's insider trading. So people have security clearance for financial reasons, and then also because they want to know, they want to be in position to hear something, you know, some in the chain of command before the commoner, so that they have advanced warning or whatever it is. So, but mainly it's just financial reasons. A lot of it is that, you know, and then they can leverage it. If you get a certain level of security clearance, you can like leverage that. You be like, I've been operating, I've been at this level of security clearance, I've been staying true to y'all, I've been loyal, da 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 da. You know, I ain't been, you know, you can check my background, and then they can leverage that for a new job. So much of it is that, you know, it's not like it's not like motherfuckers is actually, you know, everybody's trying to suckle at the teat. They're not trying to create their own thing. Everybody's just so afraid. There's so much insecurity. You know what I'm saying? Survey data reflects investor anxiety. Analysts liken today's AI enthusiasm to the dot-com bubble where tech stocks soared on hype before crashing. The fear is that AI could follow a similar trajectory if expectations aren't met. A Bank of America survey found 54% of investors believe AI assets are in a bubble territory. MIT research suggests 95% of AI-related investments are driven by speculative momentum, not fundamentals. Ponzi schemes, man. Even chatbots are skeptical. In recent Forbes experiments, several leading AI models, including ChatGPT, Copilot, and Gemini, acknowledge signs of a bubble, citing inflated expectations and unsustainable growth. Yeah, of course they say not everybody agrees. And when they do that, right, who do they cite? They cite Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman. I don't trust nobody from the Federal Reserve. You know what I mean? If you watch the movie Freedom to Fascism by Aaron Russo, and they were talking to the former Fed chairman, the guy before Alan Greenspan or whatever, and he started talking in Yiddish and shit and being evil as fuck, lets you know the line of Fed chairman, who they are. But Jerome Powell, like, he a scumbag, bro. Like, even though I don't like Trump, Trump was trying to get his way with him because, you know, he always trying to get points with his base or whatever. Trump and Jerome Powell was talking, and it could be all theater, in which case I still don't trust them then. You know what I mean? But either way, Trump and Jerome Powell were talking on camera, and they were talking about how, like, they've been renovating the Federal Reserve building. And Trump was like, the budget was so-and-so. And then Jerome Powell was like, nah, it cost this much. And then Trump had the paper on him like, nah, it cost this much. Check this out. Boom. How'd you not know? You the chairman. How do you not know it cost this much? And he was like, oh, this is the first I'm hearing of this. I'm like, yeah, you're oblivious. Motherfuckers is oblivious. People been oblivious. Mad financial advisors and people within the government is oblivious, and they just get talking points and they're controlled. So like, Jerome Powell was like, no, man. The AI shit is good, man. That's a durable basis for the economy. And it's like, first of all, you the Federal Reserve Chairman, you should be shutting the fuck up and not even, everything you say affects the market. So you should just be shutting the fuck up and doing your job internally. We don't need to hear from you. You know what I mean? You're already from the banking cartel. You're already a puppet for them. So the fact that you are endorsing or condemning anything is already like, you need to be shutting the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear from you, bro. We should just be observing objective reality, observing the markets, and not having to deal with you influencing it. Yeah. So you got a lot of the economy on this AI bubble that's propping a lot of it up. But of course, the military-industrial complex is intimately tied to it too, and that's a lot of what's propping this shit up too. Defense spending accounts for roughly 3 to 4% of U.S. GDP, but its influence is far deeper, shaping entire industries, labor markets, and regional economies. While not the largest sector, the military-industrial complex plays a disproportionately strategic role in the U.S. economy. The average defense budget over $1 trillion, a 15% increase year over year. The share of GDP. Defense spending typically makes up 3 to 4% of U.S. GDP, down from the Cold War heights of 6 to 10%. But the federal discretionary budget, the defense consumes over 50% of discretionary spending, making it the single largest category of federal spending. And it's a feedback loop, you know. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, etc., they fund the politicians. The politicians endorse wars and conflicts. The government then buys weapons from Boeing, Raytheon, you know what I mean, etc., Lockheed Martin. And then that boosts their stock. And again, it's insider trading. It's like a feedback loop. So they know, like, all right, if I promote this war, this conflict, that's going to boost Lockheed Martin stock, which I have stock in, and then I'm going to also get support from them to get reelected, and then I get money from the insider trading, and it makes the economy look like it's actually some substance in it. So yeah, employment. Defense contractors support millions of jobs both directly and indirectly across aerospace, cybersecurity, logistics, and manufacturing and regional economies. Cities like Huntsville, Alabama, San Diego, and Norfolk, Virginia are heavily dependent on defense contracts and military bases. Whole cities, when a base, if a base shuts down, whole cities be evaporating. You know, so much is, again, we're dealing with a war economy, and if there's a base near somewhere, then you're gonna get some money, you're gonna get some economy because everything's stemming from that war economy. Innovation driver, military R&D has historically fueled breakthroughs in GPS, the internet, semiconductors, and AI. Yeah, because the internet was created by ARPA or DARPA. You know, it's a military installation. They didn't create it. It's a repurposing of it. Industrial influence. Defense firms like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman wield significant lobbying power and shape national policy priorities. Basically what I just said. Opportunity cost. Critics argue that high defense spending crowds out investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Yeah, we spend more money on bombs and insider trading for those bombs than education, healthcare, and our infrastructure, our roads and bridges, and all of that. So economic distortion. Some economists warn that over-reliance on military funding can create structural imbalances, especially in regions where defense is the primary economic engine. The whole country. Yep. Oh, this is a random search I had up here about Jack Daniels, because Jack Daniels is around the world. You see it everywhere, right? And I was watching Mind Unveiled shit about Nashville Unveiled, and it was talking about the Motlow family, which is like an extension of the Jack Daniels family. They became the stewards of the brand, and he was going in. I'm gonna just if y'all want to watch the video about it. He just talks about the political influence of the Motlow family in Tennessee and around the world, because they have kind of like a monopolistic situation with whiskey around the world. You see Jack Daniels everywhere. Some people love that shit in other countries. But it's funny because they're from Moore County, Tennessee. I mean, you gotta watch the Mind Unveiled, Nashville Unveiled. I knew this shit about Memphis, right? You know, that the original Memphis is Memphis, Tennessee, and that it was named Memphis before the Memphis in Egypt, or fake Egypt, was discovered. So I knew that shit. I knew that, this is the original Nile Valley, or Euphrates Valley is the Mississippi River. And so I was privy to that, but he really went in on like the old world buildings within Nashville. And I've been in Nashville and walked around Nashville, and I really didn't think that much of it when I was in it. But then I was looking at this shit, I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. Some of these buildings I didn't see, but that shit is crazy. The Parthenon, it doesn't make sense that a Christian society would build a Parthenon in the 1800s and have the goddess Athena in there, and y'all supposed to be Christian. This is pagan shit. Why would you spend the money? And, it's just so much fuckery, man. So much fuckery. The whole country, it was already built up before the so-called colonists got here. They didn't discover nothing, bro. There was massive wars here, but, internal wars and regional wars between you melanated folks. And then when the dust settled on all that and everybody was hurting each other, they came in and swooped in and didn't discover nothing. They just usurped it, what was left after all of the collapse. And motherfuckers act like shit is modern. It's the tail end. They caught it on the tail end of modernity, and then this shit just continued to degrade, and where we're at, and we're in this dark age now where Nick Fuentes will block me over a comment but act like a free speech champion. Oh yeah, I seen Trump was talking about invading Nigeria because of the Christians. They say that over 52,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria since '09, with 7,000 murders in 2025 alone. You know what? It's probably sad. You know, people probably have been getting bodied. And, you know, they said 100 Christians was killed in last 76 days. 7,000 in the first 220 days of the year. So an average of 35 Christians a day. But again, you have tens of thousands of Gazans that's buried under rubble, that's killed, that'll never, they done to. A lot of them is Christians. They blew up all the Christian churches in Gaza. The Christians in the West Bank get harassed. The Christians in Syria now getting harassed because the West interfered and put an Al-Qaeda dictator in there now because they ran out of Assad. They've been trying to run out of Assad for decades. And so now you want to invade Nigeria? Come on, bro. You don't give a fuck. Anything to deflect from the tiny hats. You know, and of course it's more of a like of a Islamophobic type of vibe. You know, I don't like Islam either, but it's like you trying to put me in this false paradigm where I have to love Israel and hate them. Like, why can't I just not like either one of them and not like Christianity as well? How come I can't step into that space? I can like an individual Christian, but I don't like evangelism. It means war. So, I mean, literally that's the etymology of the word. So I don't, and Islam or Muslim at least means so he who submits to God or whatever, or the creator. It makes sense etymologically, but in practice we see where it went. And same thing with Judaism. They all falls to vanity and fucking people just focused on like sacrifice and trying to counter their vanity and pride and their lustfulness with apologies and sacrifice and you know, some sort of submission to something outside of their will. It's crazy. It would be crazy if they invaded Nigeria. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but it would be pretty crazy. They bombed Nigeria or something. Yeah, that's right. On yesterday they had the supposed ISIS extremists. Man, ISIS was created by the U.S. So anything involving Patel, I'd just be like, this is a joke. You know, Director Kash Patel announced arrests, crediting swift coordination with local law enforcement from preventing a potential act of terror in Dearborn, Michigan. Because again, Michigan and Minnesota, they imported a bunch of fucking Somalians and Muslims. They got Somalian mayors and all types of shit out there, and they don't even have to. They basically just a little Somalian enclave, but they must have been stealing something from Somalia, and that's usually what happens. You steal a bunch of lithium and shit from Afghanistan. You got to work with some Afghanis on the ground level, so you go you destabilize the country, and you work with some of them locals, and then then you kind of open the door for them to come to your country, because it's like a opposite but equal reaction thing, and that's what always happens. They must have did some dirt in Somalia, you know, before Black Hawk Down, you know what I mean, all of that. They did some dirt in Somalia, opened the door, because they want to get something out of Somalia, so Somalia has to be able to get something out of them, so you get a bunch of influx of Somalians and Muslims and shit, and they basically gave them a congressional district with Ilhan Omar. They was like, all right, we'll give y'all a House seat, we'll give y'all representation in our government, basically, because we stealing so much from y'all, and we want to continue to do that, so we'll give you this. And that's kind of the exchange that's been happening across the country unbeknownst to the American, the original, real Americans, and even the hybrid Americans. No formal charges in this investigation. Targeted attack not disclosed. Seems like another lie. Like motherfuckers writing on the bullets. Remember that? For like a week, every crime had motherfuckers Sharpie markering on the bullets. This shit look terrible. Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan is one of the largest Arab American populations in the U.S. I got a couple more things here. Yeah, the President Trump has implemented a controversial immigration policy that prioritizes white South Africans, specifically Afrikaners, for refugee resettlement in the U.S. while slashing the overall refugee cap to just 7,500. So they're only going to let 7,500 refugees in a year, right? But they want them to all be South African Afrikaners. People don't understand that a lot of them is Jews. Or they say they're not Jews. They be like, I'm atheist or some shit. But their mom or granddaddy was a Jew, or grandmom was a Jew. And, they were Dutch. And, or Jewish, I should say. And, so that's, of course, he would prioritize that. Refugee cap reduced, the lowest refugee cap in U.S. history, down from 125,000. Most of these limited slots are being allocated to white South Africans, particularly Afrikaners, whom the administration claims face racial discrimination in South Africa. Personally, like I've always been saying, no humans should be living in Africa full time. You know what I mean? You look at the Khoisan of South Africa. That is the original Asian. These motherfuckers is from Asia. And they got ran into South Africa by the mutants. So, and then the mutants was like, fuck it, we chasing you into South Africa. You know what I mean? So, I get it. Y'all all not supposed to be there, though. So, that's why it's so hard to have some of these discussions. I guess that's why, it's best to just shut the fuck up on most situations. Because what can you really say? It's like, yeah, the Dutch is foul. It was foul. They did foul shit. But neither one of y'all supposed to be there. But you're there now, I guess, right? So I guess the suffering will continue. Policy rationale. The White House stated that these emissions are justified by humanitarian concerns. They speak English and they Jewish. That's why they bring them. Ain't got nothing to do with nothing else. Yeah, they're farmers. They might participate in society, but you gotta think about it. Farming is another thing that's about to be completely streamlined by AI. It's already, so much of it is already mechanical or illegal immigrants. Oh, like I said, Palantir, they had basically that $200 million merger or deal with Lumen. Lumen AI is an open source agent-based platform developed by Anaconda that enables users to interact with data using natural language, making it easier to explore, transform, and visualize complex data sets without writing code. That just wipes out coders. People was making $100,000 a year code like 5-6 years ago, and now you can just use natural language instead of using code. So you got a whole job force that's just taking the L. They all about to be door dashing with the air traffic controllers. Lumen AI is designed to democratize data science and analytics by combining large language models, or LLMs, with a flexible declarative data framework. Here's how it works. Natural language interface. Users can chat with their data using plain English. Lumen AI interprets queries and generates SQL pipelines, visualizations, and dashboards automatically. Agent-based architecture. It uses specialized agents to handle tasks like data retrieval, transformation, and visualization. To me, this is because we're merging with Palantir, and Palantir is going to. Okay, the word Palantir comes from with the J.K. Tolkien or J.R. Tolkien, J.K. Tolkien, I think. the guy that wrote the Lord of the Rings back in the day. It means like looking glass. You know, in the Lord of the Rings, it's like one ring to rule them all. Palantir will be that one ring to rule them all. That will be it's a smaller company compared to like Amazon, but it's gonna absorb all of those. It's gonna be the the capstone on AI. And so since they can, do these queries and stuff with more natural language, I mean, it's gonna get more and more to where they know what the slang is and everything, and it will be, you'll be able to be monitored in real time, no matter how much slang and code that you use, in your vernacular. It's gonna have to be, people gonna be having to communicate through fucking braille and, you know what I mean, shit like that. You know what I mean? Shit like that. You know what I mean? That's what I see. Lumen AI can generate interactive dashboards and data visualizations that are easy to share or embed in notebooks. Outputs are serialized, allowing for reproducibility and collaboration across teams. This just more streamlines what you're saying and able to track what you say, your natural language. With it doesn't have, it's automatically converted, whereas before I guess they had to transition things into code, and then the code would be read. Now they can just be like, look, this is what this motherfucker said in this slang. Think about 5 years off when they're monitoring every single fart that you have. Lumen can ingest documents and data sets to provide contextual embeddings, enhancing the accuracy and relevance of AI-generated insights. Lumen partnered with Palantir to deploy Lumen AI across its digital communications network. This is in a bid to accelerate enterprise AI adoption, combining Lumen's infrastructure with Palantir's intelligence platforms. See, like, they want to be a part of, because they said accelerate enterprise AI adoption. Every single thing, every single app, it's already kind of intimately tied, but everything's going to have some type of AI component, if not be completely AI. Every app, every web page, everything that you're using, be it your wireless speakers, obviously, your TVs, your refrigerators, your washing machines, it's going to be AI components to everything. So it's all going to be more and more monitoring, as that all gets merged into the one ring, the looking glass of Palantir. It builds and shares real-time visualizations across teams. It's that real-time monitoring that they want. It's one thing to like aggregate a bunch of data and then have projections, then to in real time you're already instantly collecting data and applying it into some sort of projected algorithm. Because then it's like it's influencing. It's that feedback loop where they take the data in, they can make ripples within the market or within an individual's experience, and then that manipulates the outcome even more, and then they can project the outcome even better through the manipulation of the outcome. Enterprise AI adoption refers to how businesses integrate artificial intelligence technologies into their operations to improve efficiency, decision making, and innovation. It's not just about AI tools, it's about embedding them into the core of how a company works, and that means everything. Deploying AI across cloud infrastructures, data lakes, enterprise software. Yep, machine learning platforms, natural language processing. That's it, man. Just training the machine how to be more like you, understanding you better so it can be more like you. Creating hybrid workflows where humans and AI collaborate. AI assisted decision making or content generation. It's just going to create more atrophy. it's not like the core principles in every human is there, you know. Then they use the AI based off of that. It's like a jaded outlook. The principles is not there, and motherfuckers is using AI to like talk about suicide and how to pick up a bitch or start a LLC, you know, for some anything shit. Yep, and the CEO of Lumen used to work at Oracle, held senior leadership roles in sales and strategy at Oracle. The vision for Lumen, building the backbone of the AI economy. Lumen was founded in 1936 as Oak Ridge Telephone Company by F.E. Hogan Sr. Hogan sounds Germanic, but everything, a lot of English shit sounds Germanic, so I don't know, but it's spelled in a way that makes me feel like it's Germanic. 1930, Oak Ridge Telephone Company founded by F.E. Hogan Sr. In 1946, ownership transferred to Clark McRae Williams, Hogan's grandson, who expanded the company. 1967, incorporated as Central Telephone and Electronics. 1971, renamed Century Telephone Enterprises. 1999, became CenturyTel. That's when I remember CenturyTel. 2009, merged with Embark and rebranded as CenturyLink, which I think a lot of people might have seen that somewhere. Acquired Level 3 Communications, expanding its fiber network in 2017, and in 2020 rebranded as Lumen, signaling a shift toward digital infrastructure. What is the fucking company in Severance called? What is that? I'm about done with this video, but what is the company? Lumen Industries. I knew it was Lumen. It's just spelled different, but it's the same. That's hilarious, man. Let's see if y'all got any comments. My mom, y'all like how I'm up in here in the Dexter room? It's Dextered out. Don't come over here. Don't come over here. You know what I mean? We look like we redecorating. We painting walls. You paint houses? My mom helped her friend heal from stage, I don't know which stage, to breast cancer with Reiki and veganism. After x-rays, she said her doctor was shocked how fast she recovered. Yeah. How much of it is misdiagnosis, though, too? A lot of it they don't understand. I don't think they understand the real epicenter of the cause of cancer. So it's mostly just fungus in different layers of tissue, in different areas of the layer of tissue, and it comes out as a different organ being infected. The real leaders are people who want respect and freedom for all ethnicities and cultures. These people who believe only their group deserves those things aren't following harmony on earth. Lula didn't get involved in the shit in Rio because him and Israel are heavily invested in the money. Yeah. The four-finger bandit Lula is definitely, I mean, he's tight with Castro, and all these motherfuckers is Sephardic Jews, you know what I mean? Probably mixed with some Ashkenaz in there as well. But, you know. And I say they're not like the original Sephardim. They're like the Canaanite offshoot Sephardim. You know, like a crypto Canaanite Sephardim. But yeah. No, I mean, the thing is like the real leaders don't want to be leaders. You know what I mean? Because you got to be more selfless. You got more responsibility. So some people are designed to be leaders genetically. And that means you got a lot of pressure. Will there ever be harmony on Earth? There is harmony. There's always harmony on Earth. It's just that the process is so much more grand than this miniature human life that we have now that's so short that we don't really get to see how things balance out. But the harmony is just always, it's just such a big balance that you don't see it. You know what I mean? You could live and die and not really see how things are in perfect order. It's just so much more grand than your little ant life. The original Europeans got replaced through conquest. The original Europeans are Shemites because Edom is still Shem, and some are Hamites too, though. And you had the French Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars. A lot of that is a slave uprising. You know, every time you have these revolutions, you're having slave uprisings. So you're having pale people usurping their masters, and then things just get worse. You know, when a slave leads, everybody's a slave. When the leaders lead, there's a chance that that everybody can live a good life, have a good quality of life, but they can still be scumbags. But I'm just saying, when a slave leads, they don't have the capacity to really lead like that. You know, they can lead in an instance maybe for a period, but they're not designed to be leaders. You know, it's just not what you're designed to do. But if the leaders are not being themselves and they're dropping the ball, then a slave or somebody else is going to pick it up, you know. A Gentile, they're going to pick up the ball and then they're going to run with it, and it is what it is. But you had different invasions from West Asians, like I was saying, the Slavs. All right, so we can go through this shit. The King of England, he says he's related to Vlad Dracul. Vlad Dracul is from the Carpathian Mountains, which is like modern day Hungary, which is like the center of basically Yugoslavia. This is a West Asian bloodline. Whether you call them Huns, what have you, whatever you call them, is a West Asian bloodline of Slavs that continues to change their name. You know, they changed their name into a German name. Because remember, Germany, the fake Jews, they call Germany Ashkenaz. So when they took over Germany, because Germany used to be swarthy, if you look at Benjamin Franklin's, one of his last letters, is called the letter for the Palatine Boers. A Palatine Boer is what they used to call a German. And he's saying that we can't let the Germans take over. They're swarthy. Swedes are swarthy. You know, so they're brown. You know, they're blackish. Schwarz means black in German. He's like, we can't let them take over. So, and that's in 1789 that he's saying that Germans are swarthy. And so you had a gradual whitewashing of all of these countries in so-called Europe or Edom. And so you had this bloodline coming from West Asia infiltrating as things were continually collapsing and breaking down. And they continually change their name as they shift from West Asia into Germany or Ashkenaz, what they call Ashkenaz. And they switch their name to Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And that's where you get Saxons or Saka. You know, that's just an offshoot of Scythia or Scythian, Scythia, Saka. They're all, because again, there was no vowels back in the day. So the Scythians are West Asians. And that's where you get the Budini tribe. That's where red hair comes from. That's where blue eyes come from. And they took over Germany through conquest and through interbreeding. Just like the Mongols took over everything from East Asia into France. They just dominated and forcefully forced themselves on people, had sex, and spread the parasite. You know what I mean? So, like, the recessives got their numbers up. They interbreeded together. They got their numbers up in mass. And every time they would take over an area, they would take over the women, so they would take over the land, and then they would take over the names, and then they would usurp the identity. So they came into Germany. They switched. They. It's just like when people change their name from Stein to Stone to anglicize it. So they changed their name from Scythian or Saka to Sax, and then you get Sax Coburg Gotha, right? And so then when the Germans took over England, when you had the king of Hanover became the king of England, that bloodline took over England. You know what I mean? So they took over all the mechanisms of England and the British Empire. It's not, at that point, it's no longer British. It was English or English. Because again, England comes from England, which is the Anglos, which is from northern Germany or southern Denmark. And that's where English comes from. And fallen angels are Anglos, right? Demons. And so they Anglo-Saxon. That's where you get Anglo-Saxon, because it's, the bloodline. That's where you have a congealing of recessives. Every group has a recessive. Shemite has a recessive. Hamite has a recessive. Yaphetite has a recessive. And then if they all interbreed, then you get in like a chimera of recessives. So then it's kind of, and then if they inbreed, then you have a psycho population. You know what I mean? Because they're getting further away from the archetypes. And so then, so the Anglo-Saxon, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha becomes the banking cartel that, is involved with the Rothschilds or whatever. They change their name to Windsor after they become the British royalty. And so now it's called the House of Windsor. And that's why he got a house. The King of England has a house in the Carpathian Mountains. He goes there every year. He says he's a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, of Vlad the Dracula, Vlad Dracul. And it's that Dracula bloodline. It's the vampire bloodline. It's pretty straightforward and out. They don't really lie much, honestly. It's just people don't pay attention. And so that's the line of that's really kind of the way things got disseminated or spread so much. The paleness spread through those type of conquests throughout Asia, and then from Asia into Europe. I mean, the whole thing is Asia. Don't get me wrong. And then when the Arabs started taking pale people as slaves, then, because again, the Arabs, the Moors, the Huguenots, these black Muslims and Jews, they started taking, pale slaves into Africa, and that's why a lot of white people are actually from Africa, in that sense. And then you have like me and Pharaoh were talking about. You got like Mind Unveiled actually has a great series on the homunculus. The original, I guess mutant, the original mutant that's from Africa that eventually got crossbred into other groups. And then, then you have a perfect, more docile slave. And so then, then this shit just got streamlined, where you had Berbers bringing slaves into the Americas, which were pale people. And they were bringing slaves, selling slaves all over Africa, into India. And then eventually the slaves reach a point where they're like, we have so many of us, we might as well take over, and that's what the American Revolution is. That's what the French Revolution is. That's what it is. You know what I mean? So they just usurped everything. They took the identities, they changed the names, they anglicized everything. And then, once you're on top, you can just, you get a hold of the art, then you can get rid of the history. You can whitewash the history. And, your granddad might have been brown or black. And then you just continue to breed pale because white becomes a status. And then now, by 2025, you say that you white. which is a status, is an illusion, you know what I mean? But that's how Europe became more pale, because not only did the slaves take over, then you had it become a status because they took over. Then paleness became a status symbol, and so people were willing to give up their melanin for status, which in turn allowed pale people to continue to exist for a greater amount of time, where usually people would just breed. If they were breeding objectively, they would breed away from the recessive. So, recessives wouldn't breed with each other. They would only breed with dominance. And then you would be able to continue to stay in a more biodiverse state of being with greater amount of melanin, dopamelanin, and which is a healthier state, a more autotrophic light producing state. You have a greater potential to produce and receive light. And be less parasitic. It's a greater potential, doesn't mean automatic, but the potential is greater. But if you have a bunch of people like looking at paleness for status, which you do in Asia now, in Latin America that happened, in Africa people bleach their skin, it became a status symbol to be lighter. And I think we kind of reached the peak of that already. By 2020, I think that was like the peak. And now I think it's blatantly going in the other direction because it can't continue, because you're just going to have more autistic motherfuckers, man. So, matter of fact, let me get the rates on that. I know that the pale person is more likely to be colorblind and tone deaf and than you melanated people, and it's probably, I'm assuming it's the same for autism. No, autism rates are not the same across all racial and ethnic groups. Recent data shows that Black, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific Islanders in the U.S. are now diagnosed with autism at a slightly higher rate than white children. That's crazy. I think, again, it's like 45% of these responses is inaccurate. But also, I don't think people are really classifying a lot of shit as autism. Certain shit is autism, you know what I mean? Whether it be any type of communicated dysfunction, whether it's spiritual, that's a spiritual autism. So it's different degrees of autism. Some people is completely calcified spiritually, and they might have a high IQ, but they're autistic because they can't communicate with themselves on a metaphysical level. You know what I'm saying? So I think the way this is, you got autistic people measuring autism. And I do think, also too, is that if you have the highly melanated body, you have the Lamborghini of bodies. So you're just gonna be more sensitive. So it might not take as much. You could ride the shit out of a fucking Honda. You might have needed to change spark plugs 3 years ago. You laid on the spark plug on a Lamborghini, you feel that shit immediately. But again, this is an aggregated thing, man. It's hard, to really test motherfuckers, especially black people, because I feel like they don't be letting the government test them after Tuskegee experiments and shit like that. I think they're the most hesitant to be tested. So I think it's hard. But the autism rate is around 4%, with Asians having the most. It's crazy. I mean, it makes sense. White people are Asian, though. So, again, we're in this bizarro world where we're just saying that white is something that... It's even in the word Caucasian. If you're gonna say that white people are from Caucasia, you know what I mean? You're saying they're from West Asia. They're West Asians, bro. So, if we're looking at the numbers here, then we're saying that and a lot of Hispanic people are Asian. So if you lump that, and the American Indians and Alaskan Natives are Asian. So if you lump all these people into one group, as you should, which would be all these Asian motherfuckers, and then some of these black people are actually Asian because a lot of them are African and not American. You know what I mean? The number again, figures lie, liars figure. Sometimes they reflect the reality, but a lot of times it's you're dealing with, a lot of retardation. So autistic people making autistic graphs. But yeah, man, I think that's it. I think that's it for the comments, huh? Nah, I think that they're gonna get the food stamps back probably sometime, probably around right before Thanksgiving. It'll probably all get cleared out what they gotta do by the full moon. This is more so to me them getting people acclimated to government shutdowns and shit just going offline. They can't do it all at once. If there's no more food stamps, it's gonna have to have a hard counterbalance in some other area of society. And I don't think they want people to start working together. So instead of pushing people to do that, I think they're just gonna bring food stamps back with higher restrictions, and you might have more lapses in payments. Yeah, nah, man, you're gonna get shadow banned if you talk about anything of real substance. A cancer cell is just a cell that's it's not communicating with itself. It's low oxygen, or low prana, I should say. A cell is a cell, whether it's cancerous or healthy. But yeah, have a good night, man. Or if you're watching this in the morning, guten Morgen, guten Tag.